So when it comes to living longer, you want to thrive, you want to feel good in your body. Our guest today, Dr. Rand McClain, is going deep into how to feel better and live longer, all of the easy, free, simple hacks. And me, I'm telling you, all of the emotional interventions that you need to be doing to keep your body feeling good, and you're the most magnetic person out there. So stay tuned for this amazing show. We're ready. Let's get in. Oh my God, you have no idea how many people are walking around the world with repressed emotions. Now, if you listen to this show for a long time, you heard me talk about pieces from this. I've had a fantastic guest over the years, but it occurred to me very recently that I should just be given some easy, simple tips for everyone who, one, may not have the time, the budget, whatever it is, to see me privately or in the virtual group setting. What can we access right now, free, at home? Start intervening into our rituals that'll make us feel better, that'll make our body feel better, to help us get in touch with our body, help us get in touch with our emotions. So I thought to myself, there's 3 really simple exercises that over the years, seeing so many people, that I've reduced into the most powerful bang for buck interventions for emotional healing. So today, I'm going to tell you 3 of my easiest interventions of getting back in the body, beginning to get in touch with your body, beginning to get in touch with those deep repressed emotions. Number 1, when it comes to connecting to your emotions, it is nearly impossible to do so if your belly isn't relaxed. Whoa. If I ask everyone listening or viewing this show, take a deep breath in. Take a deep breath in and notice if your shoulders are going up and your chest is inflating. Because that isn't the way we're made to breathe. How many of us are sucking in our stomach and then breathing in? And if you notice, most of you out there are breathing like that all day, every single day, through and through. Now, I want everyone viewing or listening to think about if we all went on a giant community hike, right? 20, 30, 40,000 of us going on a massive hike. And there's a 20-foot bear that jumps out of the corner and gets on its 2 feet. Now it's 40 feet tall. And it growls, and everyone, all of us, thousands and thousands of us, can feel that growl. Immediately, all of us would breathe in, inflate our chest, and put our shoulders up. This is what's called the sympathetic breath. Not I am sympathetic for you that you're breathing like that. It's putting us into the sympathetic nervous system branch of our autonomic nervous system. That means that fight or flight is activated, or freeze. Because think about it. If we saw that bear, all of us, most of us would run. Some of us would freeze. None of us would try to fight the bear, unless there's a brave one out there. But most of us would be in that freeze or flight. So that breath is the breath of sympathetic nervous system. Now think about how many of you are activated just in that breath all day, every single day. Look at your stomach. Is it tight? Feel your stomach. Is it tight? Now I want you to relax it. This is the number 1 thing. I want you to relax your belly and think about like you just ate Thanksgiving dinner and you lean back and you sort of just unbutton the top button, and maybe you loosen the belt a few notches and your belly hangs. And this is opposite of what society says. We got to have our stomach in, like you're going to a cocktail party, you got a tux on, or you got a cocktail dress on, or we got to look really good and fit into it. No. This is the opposite, where we're and relaxing our belly. Kind of feels good to relax our belly. But notice how much tension is in your belly just from relaxing. If there is tension and you feel like you have a rubber band waistband on, that means that you're sucking your stomach most of the day. Think about children. You know, when they're walking around in their diapers, underwear, or even naked, they got their little pot bellies. That's because they're breathing naturally like their body intended. Because when our belly is relaxed and out, guess what? Our diaphragm can fully expand, right? That's pushing in the organs in a good way, moving the juices, detoxifying, right? But also as we're exhaling out, the diaphragm's expanding more, right? And pumping blood into the system. This is important for our overall health. Aside from emotions, we got to make sure we're breathing right. So every single person, check in on your stomach. If your stomach is tight, just let it loose and relax for a moment. And let your belly hang. Now put your hand on your belly and feel it, right? Wherever you are. You could be at work. You could be in the car. You could be on your living room couch. Put your hand on your belly and just feel it, right? The Buddha belly. Now, That is just an awareness around that is going to change your life. I want you to make sure 3 times a day minimum. So what are 3 things you do every single day? You probably brush your teeth, I hope. Maybe you shower every single day. Okay. You definitely eat every single day. So choose one of your meals too. So 3 times a day, before you do that thing that you are going to do inevitably, check your belly. Is my belly relaxed? Is my belly soft? Is my belly hanging? And just check in if your belly is relaxed. That already is going to start the gears moving in your body for you to have that mind-body connection that, oh, wow, my belly's not relaxed. Let me relax it. Now, the more you do that, the more you're in the awareness of what a belly that is relaxed feels like. Do it in your car, do it at work, do it before you eat. Relaxing the belly is going to put you in the opposite parasympathetic state. Now you're going to not only digest your food better, but you're giving your nervous system the signal that the environment around you is safe. The evolutionary biological signal that bear isn't there. So now your cells can relax. They're not in hyperdrive. Your nervous system is not on hyperdrive. Your immune system is not on hyperdrive. I actually believe that so many of us are suffering with so many diseases because we're not breathing right. We're just not, listen to that. I'm going to say that again. I believe so many of us are suffering with so many diseases because we're just not breathing right. And we're telling our body that it's not safe. And we're now suffering with the complications of being in an oversympathetic state. And then we go to the doctor and we go, I don't know why I have all this going on. And they're like, okay, well, we have a medication for you to shut off your body signals. Forget that. Connect with your body. Belly's number 1. We're talking about emotions. But first, it's about mind-body awareness before emotions. The second thing, I want you to connect to your body every single day. I did a little bit of a show about how to connect to your body a few months ago, but very simply, you don't have to take 40 minutes to do a deep 40-minute body meditation. You can, and that's all the better. But a lot of us are busy people, and I want to make sure that you all integrate this into your lives. So really getting in your body 5-10 minutes. So what does that mean? Well, if you wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth and you do your little morning routine, and part of it is meditation, before that, I want you to do a body meditation. Now, this is what I do. It might help you. I wake up, I brush my teeth. I'll check my belly in the morning, make sure that, okay, I'm breathing right. I'm going to start off my day in a parasympathetic mode, unless the lion starts chasing me, and then it'll go in sympathetic. Then I'll lay down on my couch, and then I'll just do a body scan. For me, one day might be feeling my feet, feeling my toes, feeling my ankles, feeling my heels, feeling the weight of my body. Right? You want to make sure you feel the weight of your body being held by the surface that's under you, right? Because that's going to help relax your fascia, relax your muscles. Your nervous system is going to start relaxing. This might be really good for some of you in the middle of the day too, when you're really activated. I myself have a PEMF mat, a grounding mat, which is actually really helpful for me. So I lay on that when I'm doing the body scan because it helps up the experience. It makes it much quicker for me. Now, the more you do this, the better you're going to get. So at this point, I can lay down, do the body scan very quick. Even without doing the body scan, I can already tell where tension is in the body. And this is the goal. Even though it's not about doing and goal-oriented, you want to make sure you're bringing awareness to where you're holding tension. If you're holding tension in your throat, you better believe you're holding back words that you need to say to someone. If you're holding tension back in your chest, you better believe you're holding back some emotion, most likely sadness. If you're holding it in your shoulders, especially on the left side, that's mostly sadness. Right side is mostly anger. If you're holding it in the belly, which I promise you a lot, some of you are tuning in right now, feel where you have tension. If you're holding it in the belly on the right side by your liver, ooh, that's anger. Left side is usually the fear. When you move into the hips, the root, or the womb, that's usually the shame, the guilt, the repressed sexuality. If there was any molestations, rapes, abortions, miscarriages, that's usually sadness and anger as well. There's another layer. So think about today, right now, where are you holding emotion? Even if it's in your extremities, your hands, what are you holding on to that you don't want to let go? If it's in your legs, what do you run away from? It's so crazy how we overcomplicate health. Think simply, think intuitively. What is your body telling you? The more that you connect to your body, the more you're going to connect to your intuition. How many of you go, I used to be intuitive, but not anymore? That's because you disconnected from your body. And you're living in your head like a balloon head without your feet on the ground. That's okay. That's protection. The body will always look to ground you so it can heal. The ego in the head will always look to pull you away from the body so it can be safe. Normal is not always healthy. Your normal doesn't mean it's healthy. That means that we oftentimes run into our head, protect ourselves from what's in our body. Guess what? Our body has everything we ever needed. The blueprint for everything. All of the healing you ever needed in your body. Are you in the right relationship? Answers in your body. Are you in the right job? Answers in your body. Everything. So it stands to believe, how do we confront the parts of us that are scary? Well, we do it by being. Creating more being in our lives. Laying down, connecting to our bodies, feeling where there's tension. Put your hand on the tension. Rest it on where you feel tension. If it's in your belly, in your chest, in your throat, in your womb, whatever it is, your root, rest it on there. And I want you to breathe into that hand. That means for every breath, as you exhale, bringing your awareness under the hand. Breathing in. As you exhale, bringing it under the hand. Do 10, do 20 of those. The goal is to get in that sort of calm, trance-like state where you're under your awareness, you're under your hand, you're in the place where you're holding the most tension. Now we're activating your intuition. Because if you ask yourself in the first 5 seconds, what am I holding here? What emotion is here? What am I not letting go? What am I resisting? Whatever way you want to frame it, the more you connect with that trance state of just rest, being at peace, that meditative state, your body's going to talk to you. And it's going to show you, or it's going to tell you exactly what you're holding on to. According to a study published in Academic Press, magnesium deficiency is a leading cause in sleep disruption in both children and adults. I bet you didn't know that. If you wake up exhausted, it can ruin your whole day of productivity. It's like a cycle. The longer it takes to fall asleep at night, the more stressed out you are about being exhausted the next day, and that keeps you up, disrupts your cortisol rhythm, and then again, you're staying up late at night, or you're waking up easily. We need magnesium. 70% of us are deficient. But the thing is, not all magnesiums are created equal, and not all of them work the same. Recent studies show that actually there's 7 forms of magnesium in our bodies, and we need them precisely in the right balance to get proper sleep. For me, 100%, I did a video on this. There's only one magnesium that I use before bed. I got my little night ritual, and I always go to bed with 2 magnesiums. There's only one magnesium on the market that has that full spectrum of all 7 forms, and it's called Magnesium Breakthrough by BioOptimizers. And it's the best of the best. It's really strong, so you want to make sure you start off light because it's so potent, it's so powerful, and it works so well. But ever since I've added Magnesium Breakthrough, not only has my sleep got better, but my heart rate variability, and I see it on my ring. And that means I'm less stressed because I'm getting better, deeper sleep. My belief is it's part of my sleep routine, but Magnesium Breakthrough is a huge part of it. So don't miss out on the most relaxing sleep you're ever going to get with Magnesium Breakthrough. There's an exclusive offer for you, the Heal Thyself listener. Go to magbreakthrough.com/DRG and use the promo code DRG10 during checkout to save 10%. Again, go to magbreakthrough.com/DRG. And again, use the code DRG10 to get 10% off. Don't miss out. Hey everyone, I want to talk about Birch. This is the best beds out there. For a while, they were like tied for number 1, 1A and 1B, but that other mattress company, there's a lot of controversy about them using toxins. I just wanted to say that. But Birch has been clean, high integrity, the best of the best. A partner I've been working with for some time now, maybe 2 years at least. Sleep is super important for me. I'm always excited to have Birch on my show. It is a premium mattress in a box company, and it makes mattresses and sleep products that are stylish, comfortable, and environmentally conscious. They have organic, non-toxic mattresses. It's made right here in the United States. And it's important for me to always be sleeping on a clean mattress. Birch mattresses are organic and they use natural materials. I know I could sleep comfortably knowing I'm avoiding all that harmful off-gassing that are coming with those conventional mattresses for the life of the bed. The Green Guard Gold certification is the stamp for quality, that we know that they're testing for all of those volatile organic compounds that we would be breathing in. My Birch has been with me for about 2 years, maybe even 2.5 years at this point. It goes by fast, but it's super comfortable, super breathable, relieves pressure points. I have the Birch Luxe one. It makes my body feel good, never waking up with my back tight, my muscles tight, my bones hurting, allergen and mildew resistant. It's got raw materials all throughout it, so it's clean. And with the Birch mattress, you're getting a 100-night sleep trial with a 25-year warranty. Okay. The best part about it is that it's going to deliver right to your front door. It's wrapped up in a box and it's easy to set up yourself. I love my Birch mattress and I think you will too. If you're looking for a new bed, check out Birch. You can click the link below or go to birchliving.com/heal thyself and you're going to get 20% off of your mattress plus 2 free pillows. If you're looking for a mattress for your little ones, also check out the new Birch Kids line. Very important. So very, very important. Connect to where you have tension. Check it every single day. You're going to see that most likely you're holding tension in the same place. For me, I'll be open about it. I oftentimes, when I check in with my body, the only place I hold tension in my whole body is my upper left belly. That's fear and worry, right? So since childhood, I've always been a worry ward. Is everyone okay? Is this going to be handled? Is this going to go right? Is this going to go wrong? So I needed to connect with my body to know how it feels. And anytime I have tension, I know that I'm not surrendering to something. So anytime I feel tension in my upper left belly, I go, okay, what am I worrying about? Immediately ask my body, what am I holding on to? Boom, my body shows me. And me letting it go. That's my work. But what is your work? Where in your body is your body trying to talk to you? What is your work? And the last part, number 3, for moving emotion and connecting to the body is your breath and voice. You got to connect to this. I'm of the camp that it's very difficult to release emotion if you don't connect to your voice. Your voice is everything. The sound of your voice, the power of your voice, the strength of your voice is everything when it comes to moving emotion. And I'm not talking about yelling from the top of your chest. I'm talking about sounding from the bottom of the bowels of your belly. Right? You want to make sure it's resonant versus right? Resonant, and you want to make sure it projects. So I want you to imagine, how do you sound if you're breathing in, filling up your belly, and from your belly, sounding all of that air out? How does it sound if you were on stage on Broadway and the whole room was filled? Do you have the capacity in your voice for every person in that room to not only hear you, but feel you? If I came late to your Broadway performance and there was standing room only and I was in the back left corner, can your voice hit me? Can your voice project all the way 30, 40, 50 feet across the whole auditorium so I can feel your voice? Because if the answer is no for you, then you got some work to do. Because to connect with your true repressed emotions, you have to connect to the projection and power of your voice. This would be number 1. This is no particular order, but this is so important, okay? So that means filling up that belly with breath, filling it up fully, right? And practicing your voice. Do it in the shower. Easiest way to do it. The acoustics are great, right? Filling up the belly, and from your belly, making the sound, right? Right? However it sounds. If you're feeling angry, what's the sound of anger? If you're feeling sad, what is the sound of sadness? If you're feeling fearful, what is the sound of fear? In the same pattern and cadence of filling up the belly and releasing the sounds from the belly. Remember, it's always going to be more guttural than it is going to be airy from the top of your chest. If you do these 3 things, intervene them in your life, intervene them every single day, your life will change. I promise you that. This is 101 to being a human. The only things that I given you was things that you did so easily, readily, and seamlessly as a child. All I'm doing is reminding you of things that you used to do so well. Do these 3 things. Watch your physical health, mental health, relationships change. The more you have a relationship with your body, the more your health changes. Because health is far beyond just, I'm not sick. I promise you that. Health is, it's everything. It's you. You literally, the expansive, most authentic, expressive version of health is you. That's the definition of health. And my God, it's our God-given right. I really hope that helped. Start intervening these early on. Do them in a day whenever you need to, whenever you feel called to. Honor your body. Do them for 30 days. 30 days. And if you listen to this show, I'm going to be available for you. 30 days. Do a 30-day challenge. Reach out to me on Instagram and let me know how those 30 days went. Send me a voice note. Not 10, just 1. 10 or that's a lot to listen to. So send me 1 minute of voice notes and I'm going to get right back to you. I'm going to be so excited to hear your experience. Let me know how it works for you. Now, we talked about emotional health. We talked about feeling good in our body, but there are physical aspects to it. And guess what? We got Dr. Rand McClain, the guru of longevity, living longer, feeling better, and he's going to give us all the cheapest physical interventions that we need to be doing to having a long, healthy, bountiful, thriving life. All right, everyone, welcome to today's episode. Listen, I'm getting up there in age. At least sometimes I'm told by the people around me. And I want to make sure that I'm living a long, healthy, but a life that's thriving, that feels good in my body. So I've been so much more into longevity, anti-aging, especially in the past 10 years. Well, guess what? I got the man, Dr. Rand McClain, on the show. And he is the anti-aging longevity guy. He's got the book out, Cheating Death. And we're going to go all into how to live longer, how to thrive, how to feel good in your body. What are the things that we need to be doing right now for the future? Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I gave you a really good hype up, man, because longevity is my thing. It's my thing. Doc, I appreciate you. Right off the bat, I'm going to ask you, what is the number one, in your research, in your practice, what is the number one thing we need to be doing to live longer?
It's a tough one there. I don't mean to dodge the question, but there's no number one. I would say, this is kind of anticlimactic when people are listening because they go, well, it's going to be some new supplement or some magical drug, right? It's not. It's the same stuff that grandma and great grandma has been saying for years. And it's really a tripod of a base that we need. And it's the sleep. And, it's not as simple as, well, grabbing some shut-eye, right? We have some very good, deeply researched science behind how much sleep you need, the quality which we can now measure, okay? And it really fits everybody, unless you are, in a category of the very, very rare that have a gene mutation. I think one of maybe it's up to 3 now that we've identified that say, oh yeah, you can get away with 5, but that's super rare. Then of course exercise, which everyone's been talking about forever, but typically it's in the context of simply weight loss or more specifically fat loss, right? But this is in terms of longevity and being able to live a more healthy life while you're sticking around, right? So we have a lot of science behind, not only performing exercise, the quantity, but the quality. For example, you don't need to do the same stuff that elite amateurs and professional athletes are doing. As a matter of fact, there's some evidence that the poison's in the dose, right? Too much of that kind of stuff is actually not beneficial for you. And there is a difference between that prescription for exercise and, just some gardening around in the backyard at we call zone 2 or less. Yeah. And then lastly, nutrition. That's been talked about forever. And we talked about before the show, how so much of that evidence is really not evidence. It's lousy evidence. The studies that are used to support nutrition are, observational, retrospective, not the gold standard in medicine or science. But we do know a lot, however, about proper nutrition. We certainly know a lot about what not to eat. We know that refined sugar, as a general rule, unless you're on your racing bike in a race, is not good for you, okay? So there's a lot more we know about this, and those 3, nutrition, exercise, and sleep, make the basis for what we call now health span, right? Mm-hmm. What you're referring to, healthy longevity, not just longevity. And from there, though, once you have that base, we can really tweak things for the long haul to squeeze out, not just years, but maybe even decades.
I love that.
And that's where, we can get into some of the more juicy stuff that people are looking for, like rapamycin. Really? That's a new drug that'll do what?
Right. Yeah. Okay. So I got an idea. I want to go by each tripod. Let's go by the tripods. Okay. Let's cover them, and then let's get to the little juicy stuff at the end. Sleep. Okay. I've done many shows on sleep, some sleep rituals, sleep hygiene. First of all, I went on your Instagram and I saw a question about napping. Is napping healthy? Should we be napping every day, or should we skip the napping because it's going to affect our sleep?
Well, we should probably state from the beginning that we're generalizing about everything here, right? For the most part, right? It's individualized. And so I would argue that generally speaking, absolutely naps are great. As a matter of fact, if you talk to the experts, Dr. Bruce, Dr. Walker, who's culled a lot of this information into his book, you'll note that we're considered biphasic. We're supposed to sleep at night, but also designed to take a nap in the afternoon. What we usually refer to as that food coma, postprandial narcosis after lunch. We blame it on lunch, but it's really designed in us to do so, to take that 20 to 40 minute nap or the siesta. However, if you're having trouble sleeping at night, here's the exception to the rule. There are always, well, I shouldn't say that. There are always exceptions to a rule. That's a rule, there's an exception to it, but you know what I mean. We build up sleep pressure as the day progresses. that desire, whether we like it or not, that feeling that we have to go to sleep. And if you take a nap, you relieve that. So people who are insomniacs, both having trouble falling asleep, which is the obvious, but also staying asleep,
Yeah.
don't want to take a nap more than likely, because in the case of the less obvious, people trying to stay asleep, there's a momentum you get if you have enough sleep pressure to hold you asleep through the night. If you keep that sleep pressure and don't take a nap, but that can be, I don't know the patients that you see, but I would have said that's an exception to the rule. But I see a lot of folks that have trouble sleeping, both falling asleep and even more so staying asleep. So as a general rule, napping's great, but again, I would take it on an individual basis.
Thank you for that. We needed to clear that up, but it's always come back to individuality as far
Always.
as when nutrition, exercise, and sleep. Now, when it comes to sleep, what are some of the doc's major pillars for getting a good night's sleep? And you mentioned people who they're not able to stay asleep through the night. What are some tips for folks who are listening and viewing who suffer with that?
One of the easy ones is stay away from pills if you can. Okay. While we're talking about that, one of the ones we don't have enough evidence for yet is CBD and/or with THC. A lot of people swear about the combination being necessary. Again, it's individualized, but I don't think we have enough, and maybe it's changed in the last few weeks. You know how it is with medicine these days, thankfully. But whether it disrupts the architecture of sleep, how long you're in REM sleep, how long you're in deep sleep, how long you're in light sleep, et cetera. And there's different gradations within those, but I'm not sure the evidence is in yet. If it doesn't disrupt your sleep architecture, there's a great case for using it, right? There's another drug, well, I don't want to get into all the drugs, but if you can avoid sleep aids, meaning the pills, that's a good idea, because so far we don't have any that you're not robbing Peter to pay Paul with. But one of my favorite, sleep hacks is, have you heard of the chili pads?
Yeah.
Anything that you can cool your mattress pad with, and therefore the bed in general, works by what's designed in Mother Nature to go from hot to cold, initiates that, hey, it's time to sleep reflex. And so a drop in temperature of, I think, 3 to 5 degrees is all you need, if that. Now, room temperature is supposed to be 63 to 67 degrees per the studies. But if you can take even a warm shower, a warm bath, different from exercise, I'll circle back to that in a second, but just something where then when you climb into bed in a cool room, and I think the cool bed just leverages it, supercharges it.
Yeah.
You'll get dinged on your Oura Ring for, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it has, okay, so the sleep latency, you'll get dinged because you'll be out, at least I will, in 2 or 3 minutes instead of the standard, whatever it is, 12 to 14, because it's so effective, and no drugs, no nothing. And typically, going back to the exercise part, if you haven't exercised right before bed, within 3 hours, you're safe, because you rev yourself up too much otherwise. But you'll still be warm enough, just even naturally, so you'll experience that drop in temperature. Not making a case for afternoon or evening workouts, but for those that's their only chance to do so, as long as you leave that 3-hour gap, you should be safe.
Yeah, and it's great that you explain that, because so many people say, hey, listen, should I take a hot shower before bed? Because everyone's talking about this core temperature going up. It's going to disrupt my sleep. You're saying hot shower is great, come out, and then you come into a cold bed, cold room, and you're knocked out.
Well, I think the key phrase there too is core temperature. You know, so much of cryotherapy is the change in the skin temperature, the outer temperature, not necessarily the core. I mean, you can change the core if you stay in the ice bath for too long, which it can be a problem for hypothermia. But when you jump into something which paradoxically is way colder, you know, some of these machines go down to 250 below. The one I have here is 150 below. That's plenty to drop your surface temperature. 25 degrees is all you need to initiate that reflex. And same here. You know, if you take a hot shower, presumably it's not hot, and you're not in there long enough to change your core temperature that much. That's the key difference, or at least one of them.
What about folks who eat late at night? Is that going to disrupt their blood sugar?
Yeah.
Is it going to affect their sleep, especially the ones who want to fall asleep and they keep waking up throughout the night?
That's a major no-no.
Okay,
there are always those individuals that can get away with it to some degree, but in general, what we find is if you eat or drink too late, particularly alcohol, of course, you're going to see that sugar spike, which is followed by an insulin spike. And just to side note that one very quickly, that's going to affect your body's ability to produce growth hormone, which is a very regenerative hormone. And of course, there's some back and forth about, you know, one of the resulting products of that manufacturer, meaning when the growth hormone goes to the liver and creates, the liver then creates IGF-1. We've got some controversy over whether that's good for you or bad for you. I would argue it's not so simple. If you've got somebody who's active, not just riding a desk all day, then, you know, something that regenerates the organs and the ligaments and tendons, it's actually a good thing. And you might want to initiate that. But at any rate, whether you're going to raise your growth hormone levels or not, you're definitely stymieing them by eating too late. But you're also, you're not letting the body do what it needs to do. When you're asleep, you're repairing things, not in the sense of the regeneration, but you're cleaning out the GI tract, almost literally sweeping it out. Not literally, but you know what I mean. You're engaging in autophagy, the cellular repair. Okay, you're at that level where, you know, you're fixing things, you're repairing the DNA, you're cleaning out the literal garbage in the cell. You know, the lysosomes are doing what they're supposed to do. So all the repair work is supposed to be done. If you're still doing the daytime work of, eating and digesting food, you're throwing yourself off. And arguably you're throwing the whole process off when it comes to circadian rhythm, which is another key to improving your sleep. To go to bed every night at the same time and rise the next day at the same time is essential to improving your sleep. I would argue particularly, I mean, the thing that's harder to change between the two is when you rise. So for people who are only grabbing 6 hours of sleep and need to get somewhere between 7 and 9, we've proven that changing the bedtime is the best approach to that. Regularity is key. The body thrives on regularity. So if you've eaten late, it might be harder to fall asleep, or again, maybe too easy, but then you wake up later, oftentimes because you have that sugar spike, resulting insulin spike, and then you dropped into a blood glucose trough, and that can wake you up. Why do you get cranky when you haven't eaten sometimes? Your body sends a signal saying, hey, where's the food? And it releases adrenal hormones that say, hey, okay, well, we're going to have to generate some blood sugar here.
Yeah.
And that can wake you up. That's not pleasant.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done it myself.
We all
I know.
have, right?
Yeah. And there's a certain time I know if I eat past it, I get hot in bed, I'm sweating in bed, and I'm just waking up throughout the night. And it's a very unpleasant feeling. And I'm like, why did I eat so late? Never going to do this again. And
made worse with alcohol too, right?
Which
goes into the system even faster than sugar.
Yeah. And it's funny because people, when they drink alcohol, they'll pass out, quote unquote, and they'll be like, wow, I didn't wake up through the night, but they still feel exhausted. And it's because they're just not getting regenerative sleep.
And I would argue the amount of alcohol you would have to imbibe to get to that point where you don't have that wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning would be way more than is good for you.
Exactly, exactly. So for the folks who are, doing the core body temperature stuff and not eating late, not exercising too late, but sometimes they're still waking up through the night. Is that a cortisol thing? Is this like just strictly a stress thing? Because there's a lot of folks who say, hey, Doc, I'm doing all the right things, but if a caterpillar comes in the room, I wake up.
Comes down to another factor that can help you fall asleep too, but the wind down factor. People talk about turning off your computers and not checking your email, not watching exciting shows, things. I would say if it's not full on meditation, it's a moment of thoughtfulness where you say, okay, I'm packing up the day, so to speak. Maybe even write it down. Okay, here's what I do tomorrow, because we have I refer to it as RAM memory, right? I got to remember to X, Y, or Z, and you juggle it all day long, and then you go to bed, you're too tired, you don't think about the juggling, but when you've had that first cycle of sleep, maybe 4 hours, you wake up with that stuff you're still juggling in RAM. It happens all the time. Yeah. People start to ruminate at night. They've got the 2.3 kids and a mortgage, and they're exhausted at the end of the day. They're doing everything right, like you say, they're working hard, but as soon as they have the energy to wake up and start worrying again, they do. And so one of the things I do, and I'm not a psychiatrist, but it's a simple trick to say, hey, write it down, because two things typically happen. Okay, one, when you wake up in the middle of the night again thinking about that thing, you go, shut up, brain. I already wrote that down. I don't have to juggle it. Go back to sleep. And two, in the light of day, you look at that and you go, really? I woke up thinking about remembering to make my car payment. And I joke, you're going to get plenty of love notes from the car company or the bank reminding you before they tow your car away, right? So why do we wake up and start thinking about that? I don't know. But that leads to another topic that we may or may not want to discuss, with time. At 20 years old, typically, this is not an issue for most, right? At 20 years old, you didn't wake up and start thinking about these things. If you did, you said, shut up, brain, I'll handle it when I wake up in the morning, like I always do. You had the confidence and you were like full of vim and vigor and said, no biggie. In midlife, you wake up and you go, oh God, and you keep ruminating about it. Why? You lost some of that. Why? What happens at midlife? Your hormones start to drop off. And with some of those hormones, that energy, that sense of well-being, that joie de vivre, that confidence goes. And you see a lot of people who come in for hormone replacement, and they don't mention anything about their sleep. This is in my office anyway. And then in the 90-day follow-up, they come in and by the way, doc, I'm sleeping so much better now. Who knew? And of course you go, yeah, no wonder, because you feel better again, like perhaps you did when you were 20.
Yeah. I remember when I was 20 that nothing could wake me up. I mean, like maybe 7 hours of sleep, and I'm still going to class and taking all the notes, and I'm going out and all. But 7 hours of sleep now, I'm a zombie. I need a good 8 hours in 10 minutes. It just changes. You feel your body changing. This is really the first time in my life, like in the past 5 years, I felt like real marked changes in myself. I'm like, whoa, okay, now this is, I guess, what's happening, but I'm going to do everything that's in your book and make sure that I'm getting myself right. Let's move to exercise, okay? You talk about like whole industries with confusing misinformation, yes information, no information. The average viewer and consumer of exercise content can get very confused. I just open up Instagram and I have this exercise the best, this workout's the best, work out for this long, don't work out for this long because it'll kill you. We just need simplicity here. What are some major pillars for longevity and health span when it comes to exercise?
Well, one way is to just measure it. There's plenty of ways to skin a cat. There's plenty of ways to get there. One of the problems is, somebody with the big biceps in the gym, because he chose his parents well, is doing something that's way wrong. But people go, well, gosh, look at his biceps. That must be the way to do it. That can sometimes work for you. Copy somebody, who's doing something and getting the results. And sometimes it can be a disaster for the reason I just mentioned. Find out what works for you. You can use some of these tips, but don't take them as gold. Take them as suggestions and say, oh, well, maybe that'll work for me. And then note what works for you. How can you know? Again, there are health span connections, as it were, between VO2 max, your ability to process, to intake and utilize oxygen. That's one thing we can measure and say, okay, is the training I'm doing from something I read on Instagram working or not? And of course, then there's always, just as a quick side note, to what degree is it working? Is it an efficient way to do this or not? And that's going to be you being your own health advocate and observing and just trying different things to see what works best. But we also know there's a connection between health span and muscle strength. We get plenty of studies, use grip strength, leg extension, stuff like that. But muscle strength is also associated with longevity. Those are things you can measure. How many reps and how much am I lifting? right? It's not so hard. And then, of course, there's muscle mass, which is also connected, and of course, correlated between strength too to some degree. It's not just neural connections. You have to have some mass there to flex. But again, that's something we can measure. So that's a pretty broad stroke right there. And within all that, you can try all these different things. As long as, and I would argue, maybe seek out some advice, particularly as we're older and we have more room for easy injury because we haven't seasoned our tendons as well as we used to when we were 18, 19, 20. But as long as you do things with proper form and there's no risk of injury, in other words, you can try a lot of different things.
Awesome. That's great. I mean, like, that's foundational.
Yeah.
And we can measure it, and that's the best way to see what works, because everyone's different, right? What works for our body. There's a lot around HIIT exercises, HIIT workouts. I know everyone's different, but are these beneficial? And if so, what are they doing for our body that so many people advocate them?
Arguably, you're hitting all the major points with that, okay? So, you can do HIIT in such a way that you're bumping up your VO2 max to some degree, certainly your strength and muscle mass. Of course, it's interdependent. You still have to sleep and eat properly, because I call it write the prescription every day using your workouts. But if you don't fill the prescription by eating properly and getting enough rest, you can actually go backwards, overtrain. HIIT is one part though, okay? It's probably the most efficient. And if you only had so many hours in a day, actually minutes, this would be the one to choose first. But there's also benefits to something that's not so intense. There's a whole nother way of exercising, okay, that affects everything differently. And there's all kinds of gradations, because you can do the what I call LSD, the long, slow distance stuff, right, where you're in zone 2. But if you do it too much, you do it for hours, you can actually have too much of a cortisol release, which is no bueno for a lot of people who are already under a lot of stress and releasing cortisol for obviously other reasons. But that gardening that I spoke of earlier, that's important too. And you're modeling the heart differently in your cardiovascular system, whether you're doing the high intensity stuff, the weightlifting, the sprinting, versus, hey, the LSD, and I can talk to, the zone 2 or below. I can talk to someone next to me and hold a conversation without straining.
Right.
So, that's again a matter of figuring out what works best for you. And there's a lot of factors for that too. How old are you? Are you under stress in other areas in your life right now? Are you overweight, underweight? What season of the year is it? I mean, there's so many factors. And it's not that complicated, but just realize that you kind of have to, again, be your best health advocate and observe, and use those as starting points anyway for what you consider is the best exercise for you. And then observe.
I love that.
Yeah.
How about folks who say, okay, I go to the gym, I just do cardio, and then I leave, and that's my exercise. Should cardio be, is it enough to do the aerobic? And is that what the LSD part you were talking about, the zone 2? Do we have to mix it always with anaerobic weight training? Which one should we do more? Again, it's individualized, but there's a lot of women in particular who say, no, I'm not touching weights. I don't want to touch weights. It's going to get me all bulky, like I'm on steroids or something.
Right.
I know that's a misconception, but should more women be?
That's a major misconception. I have to definitely harp on this one because, we've always thought of cardio as a way to burn fat. And that's true to a certain degree, that when you're and it's not cut and dry, there's not a point at which you switch from one to the other, but there's different gradations of how much you're doing aerobically versus anaerobically. And it's always been said, when you're more aerobic, you're burning more fat for fuel. And that's true. But over a 24-hour period, it doesn't necessarily make sense that that's the way to do it. Because, well, to back away from that for 1 second, first of all, if all you do is cardio, what's going to happen over time when you need some fast twitch fibers, which are not made through cardio? And again, not to beat it at horse, but starting point is individual. Are you designed with more fast twitch or slow twitch? People are designed for the long haul or the short sprint, right? And so you start with that, but you can develop these things to certain degrees within your genes, but you don't want to risk falls. And if all you're doing is cardio, again, I'm generalizing, if you start to slip and fall, you don't have those fast twitch fibers and the strength to catch your fall, well, then you're at risk. So you definitely do want to have a blend. What works for you is different. But what I want to harp on is this idea that, I'm going to stay slim and trim by doing cardio, and I don't want to bulk up, look like Schwarzenegger, good luck with that, and hormones, anabolic steroids aside, it doesn't happen from just taking those. You still got to do the work. They just leverage the work you do.
Yeah.
So that's not a risk. You're not going to bulk up from doing that, okay? If you did, and because you had the genetic predisposition, it's because you're also eating enough and sleeping enough, et cetera, and lifting differently than perhaps you should. But the idea that I'm trying to get across is muscle is synonymous, arguably, with metabolism. You have to eat so much food to support your muscle mass, right? You don't hear your buddies telling you, oh man, you missed it, Dr. G, because we went to the library last night and studied Einstein's theories for a couple hours and burned 1,000 calories. You ever gotten that phone call?
No, never.
No, it's always moving your muscles, right, to burn the calories. Well, even if you're not burning your muscles, meaning you're sleeping in your bed at night, you're burning more calories while you're sleeping, holding more muscle mass, whether it's 5 pounds represented roughly by my fist in terms of size, or 15 pounds, whatever it is. And add to that, going back to this idea of the 24-hour period, not just the time you're doing the exercise, when you're doing your other stuff, including your aerobic zone 2 exercise, you're carrying more metabolic liability, right, with that muscle mass. So doing the same exercise on the treadmill that used to burn 500 calories, now you're burning 750 because you're carrying more muscle doing it. Is this making sense?
Yeah.
So the idea that you don't want to carry it, and again, if you look at this as 5 pounds to the female you referenced that wants to stay, petite, you put this all over your body, you're not going to notice it. As a matter of fact, 5 pounds of fat looks more like a loaf of bread. So you're going to notice that more. And I realize you want to burn that off, but let's talk about the efficient way to do it. If you want to get into the numbers, remember your high school physiology? 2 to 4 ATP per calorie you're burning when you're doing it anaerobically. You're doing it very inefficiently. Aerobically, you're getting 36 to 38 ATP, units of energy that can actually be, made useful per calorie. Well, do you want to be, and no one gets this right when I ask patients, right? Do you want to be inefficient or efficient if you're trying to waste calories? I just gave you a huge hint, right? You want to be inefficient. So by exercising the anaerobic zone, not only are you setting yourself up with an investment in muscle for the long haul, you're being inefficient. You're burning that stuff off. Sure, a lot of it's glycogen, but you're still burning calories very inefficiently. And the reverse is true, right? When you think about aerobically, man, it's going to take you forever to burn away calories at 36 to 38 ATP.
Yeah.
So, you don't necessarily want to be in great cardiovascular shape. If you like doing cardio, and I know I'm starting to get complicated here, but I apologize. If you go through it, it's pretty simple. It just sounds kind of complicated. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to get in great cardiovascular shape quickly, because you don't want to get efficient quickly. You want to burn your calories at as low an intensity as possible if you're going to do your cardio. You're focusing on burning fat, and you're focusing on not getting in great cardiovascular shape, so you're staying inefficient, if that makes sense. I'm laughing because it sounds so counterintuitive.
It does.
But the numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
Right? But this is, this has been a big thorn in my side for a long time, because patients always go, no, I want to lose fat, I got to do cardio. And by the way, the reverse is true. Oh, I want to put on weight, doc. Okay, go start doing cardio.
Wow.
They go, oh my God, I'm talking to a quack. Think about it though. If you do 6 weeks or 8 weeks of cardio and get in great cardiovascular shape, okay, great fitness, improve your VO2 max, okay, raise your anaerobic threshold. Then when you stop, which is then what I recommend you do, you have all this capacity now for exercise at higher intensity levels. You're in shape, you can suck it up, you can get rid of that lactic acid. Now I am getting a little too into the weeds, but you can get those extra reps, which is what you're trying to do,
Right.
okay? And you're so efficient with your calories, you start packing it on without changing too much, so you can put on the weight.
That's a good formula.
Completely different than what we've been sort of ingrained to think, right?
And it's when you say it, I mean, if this was the 90s and we had all these, scientists, and back then no influencers, but all the people who were behind this, they'd be like, what are you talking about, right? But it makes sense when you think about it that way. And it's like this perspective on thinking that I believe needs to be changed. There's a lot of people, and I see a lot of women, yeah, exactly that. Gym, just cardio, an hour, and then calling it a day, but never touching the weights, and knowing how important that is for exactly what you're saying. So Thanks for saying that. And it wasn't too in the weeds. We have a very educated audience. We are.
Oh, good,
we are,
good.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. I love that. Okay, so now I'm inspired because my thing's always been putting on weight. So I'm going to do some good cardio, build up that endurance, and then get to the really heavy.
Get after it.
And get after it. Exactly.
You don't have to cut it out totally, but you get my point.
Yeah, I get the point. Okay, so now let's get to this last pillar here. This is the one where there's really hard to build up a really strong study around nutrition. You had mentioned it in the beginning. So because of that, there's so many different nutrition recommendations that are confusing, just like the workouts. A whole industry of, you got to eat this because this is really good for you. But if you eat this, the other person says is going to kill you. I see it, and I just like mentioned it on my show or on my Instagram yesterday. When it comes to us really foundational health stuff, what do we need to be doing?
Not listening to the experts, including me, in the sense that, you again, I go back to, you're your best health advocate. Find out what works for you. And I say this all the time. If someone tells you there's one way to eat, run away, because they're preaching the wrong stuff. There are some things we know. It's not good to eat a bunch of arsenic, for sure. But beyond the obvious, there's a lot of things we don't know, and different things work for different people. And again, going back to that, the sugar thing I alluded to, many a race has been won on pure sugar. So sugar in and of itself is not necessarily bad for you, okay? We need glucose to survive. Without it, the brain will die. Yeah. But, we take a lot of things out of context. Most Americans, did you read the obesity report? I'm putting you on the spot, but it just came out today, I believe.
No, I didn't see it.
Or yesterday, whatever it was. But I think it's by 2035, basically 50% of the planets could be considered obese. And I think this is not a good obese, meaning someone's solid muscle. Obesity is still defined, unfortunately, as BMI. We're talking about fat people. Okay, that's unbelievable when you think about it, right? Not unbelievable, because we have the ability. It's not incredulous. It's just, really? We're letting ourselves get out of shape like that? So anyway, nutrition is going to have to be designed individually for sure. Well, what I was saying is about, we make a lot of generalizations because we base it on the masses. You and I could get away with a lot, and not because we're special, I'm saying, but because we're working out. So we have a lot of calories that are being burned in something, hopefully that we like doing, right? And the other calories are still giving us enough of the nutrition we need. So the vitamins, the polyphenols, the other things that we know are of value to us, we're getting. For people that are riding a desk all day and not going through a lot of calories, unless they're going to get really fat, even obese, they can't eat too much, can they? And so they have to be even more particular about what they get, because if they don't eat all the right things, meaning that contain enough magnesium, enough of the B vitamins, unless they supplement, they're out of luck, aren't they? Yeah. Because they're very restricted as to how much they can eat to get those nutrients.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
And that's where I would argue you start with that. And from there, it's fun to look at body types, right? Ectomorph versus mesomorph versus endomorph. Like the fasting thing fascinates me. That's become the latest fad. And what I have seen, this is just my observation, is that the endomorphs do really well with that. Why? Because those are the ones I was always jealous, still am to some degree, because they could put on weight eating like a bird, right? And just lifting weights a couple times or not even, and there's the muscle mass. Yeah. But for them to have a 6-pack of abs was a lot harder, right? So they can get away with risking going into, digging into their glycogen stores, because they make muscle so easily, right? So they can get away with that. And it's good for their sugars. Obviously, it's one of the best ways to treat diabetes, we know now. Whereas a natural ectomorph, I can remember the days, because I think you're like,
I'm an ectomorph.
Yeah. You miss one meal when you were in your 20s, and there went, 5 pounds of hard-earned muscle over the last 9 months,
my God,
right?
That's a story.
So, those are just little examples of how, everyone, I don't think we're beating a dead horse. It's very important. People have to remember this. Everyone's different. But you can certainly start with different things if you have a goal in mind. For example, someone who's trying to reduce their chances or already have plaque in their arteries, coronary artery disease. We know that one of its best proponents is Dean Ornish, right? The basically vegan. He's now changed it to now. I think he allows for some salmon in there, but a basically vegan diet, which is very low. Whatever diet is, very low in saturated fats, is a great way to start. Now, as an athlete, it's very difficult. It's doable. Thanks to the Game Changers movie, we saw that it's doable to be a vegan and still be an athlete. But for most of us, particularly you and me as ectomorphs, it's very difficult to be certainly a power lifter, okay, on a purely vegan diet. So we might make some adjustments and add even more than just salmon. But a starting point with some of these diets, depending upon what the diet is designed for, is one way to go, and then tweak it for what's best for you that you find.
Yeah, that's powerful right there. Just to think about, again, not beating a dead horse, we have to figure out what's best for us. And different body types, different metabolism, one good for fasting, the other not, like you said. And I remember back in college, man, I miss a meal and I'm like, where the hell did this muscle go? It's like, or I'd get like sick, right? I'd have like the flu for like a few days.
That was the worst.
And then I'm like, what happened to me? I lost like 10 pounds. It's crazy, but it's different strokes for the different folks, right? Are you a fan of green tea? A lot of people love green tea. A lot of people love matcha for longevity. Are you a fan of that antioxidant capacity of these type of interventions?
Absolutely. Who cares if I'm a fan? The science is the science. And I'm making a point by saying that because EGCG, one of the active components of, and there's more, but one of the one that's probably most studied in green tea is, I call it chemotherapy light. Right, it works on orthoquinones, so that in the same effect that some of the cancer drugs, some of the major cancer drugs work by to kill cancer. It's also, we're talking about catechins and we're talking about the antioxidant capabilities, but as a cancer preventer and arguably a treatment, here's where we get into trouble when we say this kind of stuff. But one can go on the internet and see, particularly the studies with James Moray, who's unfortunately passed on, but he spent most of his life studying, over 30 years, ENOX2 proteins, and they're associated with either fetal development or cancer. So if you and I have some ENOX2 proteins floating around, that's not a good thing. And he showed how we can test for them, and before and after using a green tea extract. It's called Capsol tea. Which is equivalent, each capsule is equivalent to about 16 cups of green tea, but without the theophylline or any of the alkaloids that would stimulate you. And combined with capsaicin. Same way well, not exactly same, but you know how we combine something from the piperine family with curcumin to activate it, make it more bioavailable. Taking that consistently has been shown, and you can look this up on the internet, to eliminate those ENOX2 proteins, and thereby, you do the extension, getting rid of cancer. Pretty cool. And I will share, and like I do in the book, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer using both the ENOX2 testing as well as multi-parametric MRI. So we actually visualized the lesion. And I did my Capsol T and a few other things, including metformin. And it's been at least 6 years now, cancer-free. No irradiation, no surgery. And I got to be careful here because, as you know, in our profession, you can't make any claims about cancer, although there's no money in it for me, so I'm not doing it. But let's just say, even as an adjunct, always check with your oncologist first, to make sure you're doing things the right way. Because actually there are some studies showing that, for example, with metformin, activating autophagy and some of the other mechanisms activated by metformin may not be the best thing for not the majority, but a few cancers. So we do have to be careful what we suggest to people, okay? But with prostate cancer, it was a safe bet for me. I made the bet. I won the bet in this case. So far, so good. But anyway, to answer your question, I think that's part of the reason perhaps why some of the cultures that drink green tea do so well. It's also typically going to keep some of the weight off you, right? I mean, when you drink stimulants, theophylline keeps it off you. For someone who's got asthma, it helps open up the bronchial passages and might make you a little bit more active. And we can come up with a lot of reasons why green tea works well in terms, of many things, not just the antioxidant capabilities. So, yeah, that's a winner for sure.
I love it. It's one of my favorite ones, man.
Have you ever read anything negative about green tea? I have not.
Not yet. I mean, just people who are sensitive to caffeine, maybe a little bit of nausea, but not really. You mentioned curcumin now. You a big fan of turmeric here?
Curcumin specifically.
Curcumin,
Turmeric, unfortunately, probably won't get the curcumin released until it gets somewhere into the colon, maybe. So it might be good for calming down your colon. But my point being that, yeah, the active ingredient that I look for in the turmeric is the curcumin, because we've got plenty of studies with that. One of my favorite is the one with Thorne's product, Mariva. And they took 1 gram twice a day. I use it with patients to get them off, multiple doses of NSAIDs like Advil. And there's people, I'm sure you have them too, down in 3 or 4 Advil 3 or 4 times a day, and you just go, oh my God, kidney issues. I mean, it's the number one cause, NSAID use, of a peptic ulcer in the U.S. It's not H. pylori anymore. It's NSAID use, right? Burning holes in people's stomachs. So if we can get them off that, it's great. It's a great blood thinner. I mean, I was joking on something the other day. I don't know if anybody can see this, but that strafing there, that's not just old man skin, the thin skin, but it's because of the thinning effect of curcumin and a little fish oil.
Oh, okay.
But curcumin is a great one for it's been associated, again, with reduction in cancer risk, particularly pancreatic cancer, but there are others because of its effect, again, through that mechanism I mentioned. So, yeah, I'm a big fan.
When I was working in oncology, that was really one of the go-tos for so many people. I was just in shock to see how many pathways curcumin worked when it came to cancer. I was like, I can't believe this. Is this like the best supplement that we can give someone with cancer? Again, different types, talk to the oncologist, but it was really something to see that.
Particularly pancreatic, right?
Yeah, pancreatic was one of the first ones that I remember reading years ago. Okay, so what is the longevity doc's top 5 foods? What are the top 5 foods for longevity, health span, to make sure that we're here for our grandkids and maybe even great grandkids?
Is this a trick question?
It might be a trick question.
Because we were talking about, how it's different for everybody. I mean, I can remember.
Generally speaking, in science.
Generally, so for the what we're going to assume is let's define then the population we're talking about. The average American?
Yes.
Yeah, the average American, as we stated earlier, is overweight. The average American probably has fatty liver. Okay, about 1/3 are estimated in this country to have fatty liver, diagnosed or not, or some metabolic dysfunction, again, diagnosed, typically type 2 diabetes or not. So in that case, I would argue, in general, a high protein diet with low starchy carbs, meaning no potatoes, pastas, except as absolutely minimally necessary. And then plenty of fats, depending upon, again, if this person is overweight or not, and we're assuming they are. So let me back off and just say, be careful with the fats in that they're calorie dense. So you don't want to overeat them, but they're great because they don't spike your blood sugars, which is a problem. And you go on that, particularly first thing in the morning. To get into a little bit more of the nitty gritty, don't start your day with any starchy carbs typically, right? If you're the average American, because you don't want to start that roller coaster ride of blood sugar and insulin reaction and that kind of thing. Protein is a very poor source of energy. It takes a lot of work to get energy out of it. So, start with, ham and eggs or something like that. I got to be careful now because, again, we get into the nitty gritty, for someone who's got hypertension, ham might not be such a great idea because it's so full of salt, for example. So it's hard to give. You're putting me on the spot.
It's hard to give. No.
The top 5. But generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of ketogenic diets, except for, again, I go back to the endomorphs. But for diabetics, it's actually pretty doggone good too, right? Because you avoid that sugar spike. So again, if we're defining it as the average American, the problem is I'm not sure. I mean, there's guys out there, doctors even. I love watching, and you probably do too, because it may not be, well, maybe for your audience, because your audience is sophisticated, but I love watching Peter Attia because he speaks to maybe 0.5% of the population out there, if that, like doctors, right, who can follow him. But I think he's an example of someone who was on ketogenic diet for well over a year and did well with it, despite, you would argue, well, where are you getting your protein from? Where are you getting some of the nutrients that you're not going to get from just fatty sources? He's not doing it anymore. And I'm not sure it's just because he freely admits it's a hard diet to follow. And anyone who does it would say the same thing. But again, we go on and on about the benefits and detriments, and maybe it is something you cycle. For example, ketogenic diets, you go on them for a while, and then you go off them for a while, or you do them with supplements. I mean, we know with ketogenic diets, we want to supplement with certain salts, right? Magnesium salts, calcium salts, stuff like that. I didn't answer your question. I answered more in terms of food groups. But in general, I mean, I think it's why it's the craze too. Eliminating the sugary foods, the starchy carb foods is the best thing we can do for the mainstay of the population.
It's interesting because so many people have normalized having a big bowl of oatmeal in the morning.
I know.
Or like
that was
toast.
the cholesterol craze, right?
Yeah.
If I recall.
Yeah.
Correct me, right? I mean, you're going to reduce the cholesterol, and we were all focused on cholesterol. And that's a whole nother topic, right? This cholesterol fiasco that we've developed over the last 70, 80 years. This idea that cholesterol is bad. Yeah, but that's how that started, right?
Is too much cholesterol bad? Should we be liberal with our cholesterol intake? I know there was like a anti-cholesterol, and people's hormones were a mess. Where are you with cholesterol? Are you saying it's liberal? If you get tested and you're 250, that's fine. 220, that's fine. 200 is fine. Where do you stand?
Well, I take a little different perspective on it in that the analogy I use is gasoline. Is gasoline bad? No, it runs your car, your lawnmower, your chainsaw. I don't leave the 5 gallons I have in my garage next to my acetylene torch because that wouldn't be too smart, would it?
Yeah.
I mean, particularly if it were on, I guess I should say. Gasoline is not inherently bad. Cholesterol is not inherently bad. We just talked about it earlier. We alluded to it, right? How it's the basis from which we make a lot of hormones that are the steroid hormones from the word cholesterol, testosterone, estrogen, DHEA, progesterone, pregnenolone for general categories, right? So it's not bad. And I've left out vitamin D, which is not really a vitamin. It's another steroid hormone. So is it bad for you? No. When it becomes bad for you, like gasoline is, if, for example, I had a house fire, which progressed to the garage, I'd like to think I was smart enough to grab that 5-gallon can and run, right, before it became a real liability. Yeah. Well, cholesterol, unfortunately, for people that have a lot of inflammation, and therefore the start of this repair process that Mother Nature gave us when life expectancy was 30 or 35, and it didn't matter that we were patching up the walls, right? Because you're dead in another few years anyway. Who cares? Well, we're living to 90 and beyond, a lot of people now, right? And that patch job doesn't work. It closes off the aperture, right? For those people, they're out of luck in the same way that we mentioned earlier about, growth hormone and IGF-1 not necessarily being bad for you. And a lot of people, it's really good for you unless you have cancer, at which point, okay, you don't get that advantage anymore. Ditto with cholesterol. Once we find out you have plaque in the arteries, I joke that the website that says that anything we use, particularly statins, for example, that are lowering cholesterol don't work is right next to the website that says that, no Jews were killed by Nazis in World War II and we haven't landed on the moon yet.
Right.
Statins work great for a lot of people. Anything that lowers cholesterol will have that effect, typically on coronary artery disease. But if you didn't have a bacterial infection, for example, would I give you an antibiotic? Okay. Here's where we get, I believe, where we got the wires crossed. Okay. And if you talk to some of the best out there, Dr. Stephen Room over at Best in the West, UCLA, or Dr. Mark Penn, formerly with, or maybe still associated with Cleveland Clinic, he will tell you, Dr. Penn, 95% of the cardiologists, not just PCPs, don't get this right when it comes to cholesterol. We've just gotten that, I call it the I don't mean to go too far afield here, but the paint by numbers medicine, the business of medicine. Someone comes in with a elevated LDL, so-called bad, and we go, okay, well, here, let's reduce your risk. Let me just throw them some statins, which, by the way, don't come without risk. Yeah. Forget about just, when I say hurt, there have been people that have been maimed. They're not a whole bunch, but there are people that have been maimed using statins. So I don't think you want to give them out willy-nilly. Yeah. First do no harm. Remember that oath? So anyway, I think there's a lot of, that's where the wires cross. Yes, it's effective, but you don't need it till you need it. There are better ways to approach it. If you have a predisposition to coronary artery disease, well, then talk to them about maybe lowering their their saturated fat intake at that point. And then, the most recent thing, which is finally a godsend, they're showing now that maybe it's not such a big deal anymore to differentiate between HDL and LDL cholesterol, very top level designations, because as I've been saying for a while, cholesterol is cholesterol. I don't care if it's on the truck going from the liver out into the vasculature, or from the vasculature back to the liver. There's a point at which it's circulating and it has the potential to get into trouble one way or the other. So if we need to lower cholesterol, let's talk about it. But otherwise, until proven otherwise, why are we focused on it? The ketogenic diet's a perfect example. If the LDL cholesterol were the culprit in all this, our ketogenic diet patients would be dropping dead left and right. I see guys and gals with 278 LDL cholesterol, right? If it were such a bad thing, then why aren't they dead?
Makes sense.
Sorry, I get passionate about that one.
I know, I see that.
So misleading the way we've been treating it. And the science just doesn't bear it out the way we've been looking at it.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful thing. Over the years, we see more and more. But the whole cholesterol craze was crazy. It was literally, that was crazy. Okay, as the tail end of this, we're going to get to like maybe some juicy supplements or things that we can use for the longevity or the hacks. What are some of your favorites here?
Let me start with an anticlimactic one. I'm convinced that exercise is the great equalizer. And to segue into one reason why is the current craze, fad, whatever you want to call it, with NAD+, right? Do you know what the best source of NAD+ is? Exercise. For those of your audience that remembers their high school phys, we're getting some energy breaking off that hydrogen from NADH to NAD, right? Well, when you're exercising, you're creating a bunch of NAD, more than you could take and make use of with supplements, even intravenous supplements. I mean, we don't have a whole lot of science behind that yet. It's developing, it's in process. And I'm convinced that, particularly for people who are short and who don't get a lot of exercise, I've seen it in my office. One of the things I've seen even with me, who gets a lot of exercise on purpose, is resetting that sleep rhythm. Where with my Oura Ring, I can see those 90-minute cycles. It was amazing. Now, it was only for like 2 days after intravenous use of about 1 gram of NAD, right? NAD+. But in terms of other tricks, I mean, look, if you've got some repairing to do, some regeneration, I'm a big fan of stem cells. I've seen them work. I have, personal stories as well as patient stories. Anything from, in my case, serious spinal cord damage to one of the first patients I ever knew, and it's public, so I can say his name, David Lyons, who treated multiple sclerosis with it very effectively. And there's plenty of examples all around the world where stem cells used appropriately can help regenerate tissue. I'm a big fan of peptides. We have so many opportunities with peptides, right? Your audience knows about peptides. Insulin's the most obvious example people use, obviously very valuable. But we have, I call it tinker toys. They're like tinker toys, and you can have all these different configurations. Just changing one slightly can change the way it works in the cell 180 degrees. But we have the ability to test these peptides out, and they're very, we've found a way to make them much more safe, both in terms of making them shorter acting as well as longer acting. And think of it when you combine stem cells, so we can create tissue in a petri dish essentially, and artificial intelligence, where we can say, okay, looks like this molecule will be a good start, from the R&D department as to a way to replace insulin. Let's just use a simple example. They can test it not on humans or even animals. They can test it on human tissue though. And think about how you could develop drugs, other peptides that much more quickly. So I'm a huge fan of that. Peptides are things that people can use. Yeah, that was a question you asked me. What are some, not necessarily do-it-yourself things, but things that anyone can get out there and do, and that's the point of the book. Hot and cold therapy are huge, right? We get a lot of effect. One of the things, it doesn't have to be full-blown dysthymia, but, look, there's a lot of stress out there today. All you got to do is read the paper. Yeah. And if you take it to heart, that can affect you. Well, a jump for 3 minutes in a cryotherapy machine, and you got those endorphins flowing, you got particularly norepinephrine, a little energizing going on, and release, for believe it or not, I know it sounds backwards, but heat shock proteins can get released, very protective. And you can, again, the opposite, an infrared sauna for a few minutes, which is really very similar in effect to zone 2 training. If you look at your heart rate, if you're in a sauna that's at least 130, 150 degrees, you'll know, oh yeah, it's close to my zone 2 limit, right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily a cheat. It's, still valuable for you. Hormone replacement therapy. I can't talk enough about that one, because that's almost a guarantee, like death and taxes. You get to a certain age, by definition, somewhere around age 35 for a male or a female, and the hormones are going to start going the wrong direction. And they're like, if you will, the oil in the machinery. Without it, things aren't going to function properly. You can still go into the gym and fight like hell to keep the six pack and to make the muscle, but without the leverage, and I choose that word carefully, particularly in this case, testosterone, it's not going to happen. I don't care how hard you try. It's just a scientific fact. It's not going to happen. So, these are things that people can track by themselves. There's a way to track it now. You heard about, the biological aging markers, right? And there's some controversy about that. But one of the ones that's sort of a premium biological age marker is DNA methylation. Telomeres is arguably up there too. We just don't have all the best studies yet to support that one. But the reason I like that is because, one, it gives you even if it's not accurate, I'm 60, it tells me I'm 55. Great. Okay, I'm doing some right stuff, but I want to do better. I can implement some of these changes that are theoretically going to help for the general population and see what works for me. I can start taking some AC11, some TA65. I can up my exercise, not necessarily my exercise, but my gardening time, whatever I think might help. Yeah. And of course, changing one at a time would be ideal for the scientific method. But then I can measure it again, is my point. And think about just that, what I'm talking about there. Then it takes away the having to trust what you read in a study or read in a book or heard from a doctor. You are measuring it, okay? And as long as you put faith in it, it doesn't have to be accurate, but if it's precise enough, which it is, then you go, wow, okay, this stuff is working. And if nothing else, is that not motivational? Yeah. To know and to feel like you have the control over this is a great starting point. You're not spinning your wheels, which I'm sure, we lose a lot of people that way. It's 'cause I don't see results right away. And we're talking about the long-term increasing health span. If they don't necessarily feel differently, maybe they're already doing everything pretty much right. But now we're going to implement some things that'll put some time on the back end in good health. Yeah. They may not go, boy, thank goodness I tried that, Yeah. Then they're going to drop off unless they can see some way to measure that, right?
Yeah, 100%. And that's the best way. And I see that you're the biggest advocate for that through the whole conversation. That's the theme that I'm seeing, is really looking at your body. How are you feeling? You be your own scientist or advocate and really connect to what sleep, nutrition, exercise, how it's all affecting you, supplements, biological aging. You can do all the things, see how it's feeling, right? Because if we're feeling good in our bodies, then that's the best indicator, right? Let's keep doing more of that.
And not to take it away from doctors. I mean, I think our patients are coming in because they want some help. Yeah. But who doesn't want to, okay, I got your advice, but who doesn't want to take control and be able to do it themselves? Again, with the big factor being control. Yeah, I came to you because this isn't what I studied and it's not what I want to study. I'm a stockbroker. But I want to be able to trust your advice. I want to be able to take it, and then I want to see it. I don't want to have to trust you. And I do want to have the control. Why do a lot of patients go to the black market for peptides or, SARMs is a big one, right? Selective androgen receptor modulators. Why do they do that? It's not because it's more effective. I haven't seen that at all. It's because they have the control, and I think they like that. So why not give them the power to have control, but directedly?
And we do. And you've given us so many tips to explore on here for really living a longer, healthier, thriving life, which is the best part, right? Like, we all want to live longer and have our kids and see our grandkids and so on and so forth, right? But feel good. We want to do the push-ups I want to do the push-ups when I'm 80 years old, you know what I mean? I want to do some pull-ups when I'm 80 years old. I want to look good doing them, So, Doc, when is the book out? Is the book out right now?
The pre-sales are available right now. We made the bestseller list on Barnes & Noble already.
Amazing! Congratulations.
Well, I say that just because I'm excited. I don't mean to it wasn't to be to impress you, but to me, it means there's some traction that people are actually going to read this, which is the reason I wrote the book, is to spread the word, to get this out there so that, I would argue our patients can go, oh, great, I have some avenues here. Yeah. But it drops officially, it's released, I guess is the right word, on March 7th.
March 7th. And we can expect all this stuff we talked about and way more foundational stuff, what we can be doing, we can be exploring. It's basically a guidebook to cheating death.
Well, I hope so. And again, even though there's some things that we harped on that are sort of basic, it goes into the reasons why. One of the things I enjoy about what I do is for the patients that will tolerate it, which are most of them. I mean, you tend to gather what the patients that cotton to you, I guess, naturally, right? They kind of weed themselves out. But I love telling you how the watch is made, not just what time it is, and I think, because I think it helps with compliance. I think when patients understand why, again, they don't have to trust you. They do, obviously, I think, otherwise they wouldn't have come to your office, right? But then they go, oh, well, that makes sense now, right? Or, wow, I didn't think of that. It's counterintuitive, but now I read the science. Oh, okay, I get it, right? True. So sleep is boring, but if you read why and how, wow. I mean, again, I won't put you in this category necessarily unless you want to be, but, because it's usually derogatory. I'm a nerd. So I love reading that stuff, right? And there are a lot of people that go, oh, okay, because it does take away some of the mystery. And I would argue, particularly with COVID, and we won't have to go into the political stuff or all that stuff, but there's a lot of mistrust out there amongst the medical establishment. So I think it helps to be able to say, hey, you don't have to trust me. Here's the science.
Right. Perfect. I love it. Where else can anyone find you? Website, Instagram?
Yeah, all that stuff. I don't manage that stuff because it's not my. Yeah. I gave up on that a long time ago. But Instagram, LinkedIn. I think we're even going to have a TikTok thing because they do the video thing. Right?
Here we go. Yeah. We'll catch you on the TikTok then. I love it. Younger generations living longer at an earlier age.
I'm proud that I'm at least in the part of the game at this point.
I love that. Yeah. I love that, man. Hey, look, I feel your passion. I know what you're here to do, and you're just giving people so much health, science-based. It comes out of your pores, man. And thank you so much for writing this book for everyone. Thank you for coming on, giving us the knowledge, the tripod, which is so visually easy for us. Now we have foundational stuff to do. I appreciate you, Doc. Thank you.
I appreciate you too. Thank you. Thank you for having me, really.